Have you ever looked at your life and thought, I should feel happier than I do? You work incredibly hard. You've built a great career. You checked all the boxes you thought that would make you successful. But somewhere along the way, you stopped asking who you were becoming and started measuring your life by what you were achieving. The truth is, many of us have been taught to chase the wrong things. We chase money, titles, recognition. We chase someone finally telling us, you made it. But what if success was never supposed to be the destination? What if the real goal was becoming the kind of person who creates impact everywhere they go? So many of us are doing everything right. We're building careers, raising families, and taking care of everyone around us. But we're moving so fast that we forget to ask whether we're actually building a life we're excited to wake up to. Here's what I've learned. You can build an incredible career and still feel like there's more inside of you. Not because your career isn't enough, but because you were created for more than a title. Today, I'm going to share the story behind the Inspired Authority method and the philosophy that's changing the way I lead at work, show up in my relationships, and think about the legacy I want to leave behind. Not because I have my life all figured out, because believe me, I still have a lot of work to do. But I think too many of us are working incredibly hard to build successful lives without ever stopping to ask if we're building a meaningful one. So let me ask you another question. When was the last time you actually stopped and applauded yourself for who you already are? I don't think we do this enough, especially high achievers. We become so focused on what's next that we forget to appreciate everything we've already survived, everything we've already learned, and everything we've already become. I call it achievement amnesia. We forget our own story because we're so busy writing the next chapter. For the last 12 years, I've poured myself into my career, and I don't regret a second of it because every difficult conversation, every failure, promotion, the good and bad leaders I've met along the way, the mistakes I've made and the wins I've had have shaped me into the person sitting behind this camera today. Those experiences didn't distract me from my purpose. They prepared me for it. Maybe for you, it's not corporate. Maybe it's raising kids or building a business. Maybe you're going to school or caring for your parents. Whatever season you're in, don't make the mistake of thinking you're waiting for your life to begin. This is just how life works. And usually the season you're in is preparing you for the next one. Somewhere along the way, I realized I had become really good at achieving, but I hadn't become very good at appreciating. Achievement is, I'll be happy when, while appreciation says, I'm grateful while. One keeps moving the finish line, the other lets you enjoy the race. I don't think success and happiness should compete with each other. I think they should grow together. That's what Inspired Authority has done for me. If you're listening right now, I don't want you thinking, great, another framework I have to perfect before I can start. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to explain. Inspired Authority isn't a checklist. It isn't 7 boxes you have to complete before you're worthy of chasing your dreams. It's a way of living. I still work on every single one of the Inspired Authority pillars every day. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to make progress. So if you have listened to the show before or you're listening for the first time, you may be wondering, what is the Inspired Authority method? At its core, it's a framework for becoming the person you're capable of being. Not because you're trying to build a personal brand, definitely not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because I truly believe that success and happiness aren't things we stumble into. They're built intentionally through the way we live every single day. One thing I want to say before I walk you through it, though, is please don't listen to this and think, wow, I have so much work to do. The point isn't to master every part of the framework before you start chasing your dreams. The point is simply to begin. In fact, I don't think anyone ever graduates from these stages. I know I haven't. I'm constantly working on my identity. I'm rewriting my narrative, working to protect my stewardship, and continuing to learn how to show up with greater presence. Inspired authority isn't a finish line. It's just a way of living. So instead of giving you a huge list of things that you need to change, I want to give you one small action for each part of the framework because your life won't change overnight. It just changes one decision at a time. So let's start with identity. Everything begins with identity. Who are you becoming? Because eventually your circumstances change, but your character, it goes with you everywhere. So tonight, before you go to bed, ask yourself one question. Who am I becoming? Not what am I achieving? Because the person you're becoming is far more important than the next thing you accomplish. The second part is narrative. The stories we tell ourselves eventually become the lives we live. Maybe you've caught yourself saying, I'm not experienced enough. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not a leader. I'm not creative. I could never do that. This week, I want you to notice it just once. When that little voice shows up, ask yourself, says who? Is it actually true? Or is it just the story you've repeated so many times that it started to sound like the truth? Because changing your life often begins by changing the story you're already telling yourself. Next is stewardship. I talk a lot about stewardship. This is where your trust begins. Not trust in other people, trust in yourself. Because every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence that you're capable of more. So don't try and change your entire life tomorrow. Pick one promise, just one. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes earlier, going for a walk, posting that LinkedIn post you've been afraid to publish, reading 10 pages in a book. Whatever it is, keep the promise. And then another, and then another, and then another. Because confidence isn't built by thinking differently. It's built by proving to yourself that you're someone who follows through. Next is presence. Have you ever noticed that some people walk into a room and immediately make everyone around them feel calmer, more confident, and valued? That's presence. And it has nothing to do with being the loudest person in the room. This week, before a meeting or a conversation, ask yourself this. How can I leave the person better than I found them? Because the greatest leaders don't just change conversations. They change people. Next is influence. I think we've misunderstood influence. Influence is not about followers. It's not about having the biggest audience. It's about making someone's life better because you showed up. So this week, help one person. Share what you know. Open a door. Make an introduction. Encourage someone. Expect absolutely nothing in return. Real influence is earned through generosity. Then there are results. High achievers are constantly chasing the next milestone. I know because I've been that person. But somewhere along the way, we stop celebrating what we've already accomplished. We develop achievement amnesia and become so focused on what's next that we forgot how far we've already come. So every Friday, before you make your to-do list for the next week, ask yourself this. What made me proud this week? Not just what did I finish, but what made me proud? Celebrate your progress. Because if you never stop to appreciate the life you're building, you'll spend your entire life chasing happiness instead of experiencing it. The next stage is endurance. Success means very little if you can't sustain it. I don't want to build a life I constantly need a vacation from. I want to build a life I genuinely enjoy living. So ask yourself, does my schedule reflect the life I'm trying to build or just the responsibilities I'm trying to survive? You don't have to change everything. Just find a way this week to create more space for yourself. Protect your energy. Set a boundary. Block time for yourself. Because endurance isn't about working harder. It's about building a life that you can actually keep showing up for. And finally, there's dominion. This is the outcome. This is your legacy. It's when the work you've done on yourself begins creating impact beyond you. When people you've mentored become leaders. When your children repeat the values you've modeled. When your team grows because of how you led. Legacy doesn't begin when you retire, it begins every single day. So this week, teach someone something you've learned because impact multiplies when it's shared. If you take nothing else away from this episode today, I hope it's this. You don't become extraordinary by waiting until you've figured everything out. You become extraordinary by deciding today is enough to begin. That's inspired authority, not perfection, progress, not becoming someone else, becoming more of who you were created to be. So here's what I want you to do after this episode. Don't try and reinvent your life. Don't make a list of 20 new habits. Don't blow everything up, right? Just choose one thing, one conversation you've been avoiding, a habit you've been putting off on implementing, or a dream that you've been talking yourself out of. Start with one act of courage because confidence doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. The life you want isn't built all at once. It's built one decision and action at a time. That's what inspired authority is. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us become committed enough to being better leaders, better friends, better parents, better teammates, better neighbors, and better humans, we won't just change our own lives, we'll change the lives of everyone around us. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope this episode didn't just give you the framework. I hope it gave you permission to celebrate how far you've already come. I hope it gave you permission to believe that your experiences haven't been wasted and that they're preparing you for what's next. And most importantly, I hope it gave you permission to begin. I'll see you next week on Inspired Authority.